Hey, I'm Greg.
And I'm Billy.
And we're the Fuji Guys. Fuji Guys have a cool new camera to show you today. It's called the Instax Mini 90. It's kind of a retro-looking Instax camera. By Instax, of course, I mean it's a camera that produces instant pictures. So just if I'm going to face Billy here for a second, he's going to pose, and I've got the film's going to come out here. It takes about 2 minutes to get about 85% of the way processed, and about 5 minutes in total before you've got the total color saturation that Billy's holding you there. But anyways, it's a great little camera. Of course, Instax is incredibly popular with the younger generation. And I think with this new retro look and some of the great new photographic features that we've added to this model, it's really going to take up a lot with the real hipsters out there and everything that are going to like this.
So it's a fun camera for sure.
Great, fun camera. Billy, take us around front, back, bottom, center, whatever, and show us what all the buttons do on this camera.
Yeah, this camera's a little funny in the sense that, traditionally an Instax camera is in this orientation because this is where the film comes out. But the way it looks like a Fuji X series camera that you shoot this way, and of course you can. So again, I'm just going to point you the controls, starting off with the vertical orientation of the camera. The on and off switch is right in the front. So just slide it over and it turns on the lens. It's a fixed lens, so it's non-zoom. So basically, if you want to get closer to the shot, you got to physically walk forward or walk further back, which is like any other Instax, the same. The lens itself in the front, you can see there's actually an auto exposure system in the front, which now is going to auto detect the lighting situation. It's going to correct the appropriate settings for you. It uses electronic shutter as well as aperture, so it will auto adjust different shutter speeds and aperture to give you the appropriate light to properly expose in the film. Again, I said film. This is an instant photo camera, instant photography style camera. It's not digital. It doesn't save it to a sensor. It doesn't save it to a memory card. Once you shoot, it's very unique because that's the only photo that ever is going to exist in that particular time. You got your flash that's built into the camera. You got your viewfinder area here. This is where you're going to look through to compose your shot. And then, of course, you got a little LED light that's going to blink, of course, if you have it in the self-timer. So it tells you to get ready to take the photo. Again, that's really all the buttons. Of course, it says Instax Mini 90 right there. There's also a little dial in the front that you would take left and right, and you can use this to change the different modes that this camera offers, different scene shooting modes, which adjusts aperture and shutter accordingly to the scene. But you can also do that in the back, which I'll show you in a second. Okay, so let's look at one side. As you can see on this side here, it's just really for the strap or the neck strap that you can attach the neck strap to, of course. On the opposite side of the camera, you have the opposite end of the neck strap. You also got the shutter release button, and this one here, it actually allows you to shoot in more of a landscape orientation, so that when I take a photo, it's a lot more ergonomics to kind of hold. If I shoot like this versus trying to hold the button like that, okay? So you have two shutter releases, one in the front and one on the side, which allows you to shoot in this orientation. On the top of this camera is where the film is actually going to be ejected. And once the film comes out, again, it takes about 2 minutes to see something really, and about 5 minutes to fully expose the colors and the actual look, okay? Looking at the bottom of this camera, we have the tripod socket. And of course, because this camera has a self-timer, you can attach this to a tripod and take some selfies of you and or a friend. And talking about that, of course, there is a let's take a look at the back of the camera now, right? As I mentioned about self-timer, there is a button for that. There's actually several buttons, so I'll go through that. You got a macro button, you can push it, and it changes the focusing distance on the lens. You can see the lens change, but what you also don't see is the viewfinder also changes as well to help you properly frame the shot. Okay, you can turn it off. You got a battery indicator for the LCD here, and this LCD is going to show you some of the different modes that you're setting up with. Beside the LCD, you also have another one that counts the number of frames or film that you have in it. In this instance, I have 8 more photos to take. If I push a button to take the photo, that will count down to 7, of course. And once it goes down to 0, you know it's time to basically insert a new film cartridge. And to do that, this is where you would push, and by sliding it open, this thing opens up, and you have a film cartridge. that you can insert into this. This camera takes Instax Mini film. You got basically similar to any of the Instax Mini cameras. You got this pack that contains two cartridges that holds up to 10 exposure each. So in this instance, I buy a box. It's going to give you 20 exposure. And I just take one of these cartridges. I just insert it in. And the first photo that I'm going to take, of course, is going to be a protective cover, and then beyond that becomes the proper exposure. Again, I have other videos that I'm going to show you how to load the film and get it started for the first time. There's also even a rainbow film if you're interested in some cool looking effects. There's actually different color films to the actual image. This is all white. And of course, you have different colors.
Yeah, this one being the all-white border, this one being a kind of a multicolor border.
That's right.
Either one of the films, I'll tell you, something that's very popular is people writing messages on the border of these pictures. Again, primarily used by young people. It's a, you know, it's an older technology way of being social. And sharing the pictures, writing on them, and things like that have been very, very common practice with this.
Absolutely, Greg. Okay, so let's go back to some of the button layouts. You got this LD button, which is basically lighten or darken. So if you want your images to be brighter, you can push the L button, or the button so that it shows L. There's even an L plus, which means even brighter. So if you want to do some of those high key photos where it's washed out a lot, you can actually do that, and it basically adjusts the shutter speed accordingly to give you that effect. The opposite end, you can make the images darken a little if you wanted to do by having it set to D or even D plus. Or not, just D. Sorry.
Just D.
Just D.
So it's kind of like having an exposure compensation
Exactly,
dial
exactly.
without the +1, +2, and -1. It's kind of a +1, +2, and a -1 exposure compensation dial.
And generally with this Instax, if you want to hide some of the imperfections in the face, you can just lighten it up a little bit, and it works wonders. Again, I talked about the self-timer. You can toggle to self-timer feature. There's even a 2-shot self-timer, so it takes 2 photos. So if you're taking pictures of a friend and you want him to have a copy or her to have a copy, you can set it up to take 2 photos. You got your flash controls. You can turn on the flash. You can force the flash. You can do what we call a red eye reduction flash that fires a couple flashes, and it helps to reduce the red eye that can potentially happen in shots. And of course, pushing it one more time becomes a suppressed flash. So this is one of the first cams that really allows you to not use the flash and disable it completely. Because of the variable shutter speed, it will be able to capture longer exposures, get more light in, great for doing night photography shots. There's even a mode that you can actually turn on called bulb mode on this cam by pushing the mode button several times to get to it, and it gives you even longer exposures by holding the shutter button down physically, and it opens up the shutter and allows more light in, so you can get those really nice nighttime photos.
Yeah, for sure.
Now the mode button itself toggles through different modes that's built onto the camera, whether it's like a portrait shot, whether it's landscape shots. You have those pre-configured, and it basically changes the aperture and or shutter speeds accordingly to those scenes. There's even a cool artistic way of taking photos by doing what we call multi-exposure. So what happens is you can take one shot, as you can see there, and the film doesn't come out, as you notice, because it allows me to take the second shot, and I can maybe take a picture of Greg. And now it opens up. So what happens is the shutter opened up, exposed some light to the film, and then it closed again. And then I took my second shot, it did the same thing, and now it ejects the film. Now I'm going to have a double exposure, which you can get really creative with this later on. Okay, so that's the modes on this camera. Now I talked about some of the other instance cameras using AA batteries. There's even some that use a sort of a lithium type battery that's not rechargeable. This one uses a rechargeable lithium battery for the very first time. So if you can open it up, you can see it uses an NP45 rechargeable battery. It does come with the charger, so you can plug it in to charge. And that means you never have to buy any more batteries after this point, unless you shoot a lot and you get a spare.
Well, and if you do, you might have a Fuji point-and-shoot camera that uses the exact same battery, your digital camera, so you might even have a spare battery if you have one of our XP cameras or JX cameras or any one of our entry-level cameras. It's the exact same battery, so you've already got a spare $50 battery with that camera.
Absolutely. Now, I talked earlier about the Viewfinder. So on the back here is where you would actually compose your shot. There's no LCD screen for you like a digital camera, so you got to use the optical viewfinder. And when you frame the shot, you just got to be aware that when you take a photo, it's not being captured through this viewfinder, it's being captured through the lens. So we call that a parallax. So as subjects get closer and closer, what's going to happen if I center this shot in my scene, which I'm doing right now, you notice that the lens itself is pointing over to the left, so I'm not going to be able to capture this. So you want to be aware of this parallax and either move further back or correct for it.
Yeah, so the
accordingly.
viewfinder corrects for it. There's some guidelines in the viewfinder and things like that, but it's definitely something that, if you want properly centered shots, you have to kind of get used to that. It's how it was with all cameras at one point, all point-and-shoot cameras, you'd need the parallax. So there's your multiple exposure. Here's your fully developed picture of you with the peace sign versus the one yesterday. You weren't having as much fun yesterday, it looks like.
No, not at all.
Anyways, great fun, this Instax camera, the Mini 90. It's cool retro look. We'll do another video that will show you some of the more advanced features and how to load the film, etc. Check out all our videos by subscribing to our YouTube channel and follow Billy on Twitter because he'll send out updates on anytime we have new product announcements, firmware updates, things like that. Till the next video, I'm Greg.
And I'm Billy.
And we're the Fuji Guys.